I'm in my pajamas this time because I don't know, fuck you or something. Oh, hi, cat. Yeah. You are so needy today. Get your butt out of my face. Why you gotta always shove your butt in my face? I don't want your butt in my face. You're so needy today. You're so needy today. Have I not given you enough attention? Oh, my coffee's ready. Get down. Go away. Punch. Ugh. The shot's a little cattywampus, but I don't care. Yes, hi, cat. I need to work. Go away. I'm getting the script pulled up. Hi, cat. Go away. The internet's gonna learn that I punch cats. Punch. So this video is going to be considerably less funny than the other one. There are going to be fewer visual gags. My cat is being a menace. Let's get right into it. Hi, welcome to Side Note, where I take down the terrible Cosmic Sophistry video that I made. Cats, you're making noise. Well, that visual gag didn't last long. They're gonna do whatever they do. Hello, welcome to Side Note, the video series where I tell you what's wrong with my other video series, Cosmic Sophistry. I'm milking this nonsense for everything it's worth. To begin, the name, Cosmic Sophistry. It's a pun. It could mean the logic of the universe or an astronomically important argument, but it could also mean a big ol' lie. A whole wrong thing that only sounds right. A veritable tirade of chicanery. You get the idea. My voice is echoing from the hollow body guitars to my left, and it's going to come through. I should really get a microphone that I can just like keep in front of me instead of using that way over there, but this is what you're getting today. No, my coffee, not your coffee. I am so afraid of people thinking I'm not smart that I can't just give you the lie, the Cosmic Sophistry video, without also giving you a video explaining the lie. You get to deal with this self-important corrections video. It's easy to be loud, catchy, and wrong, but as my favorite vlogger and second favorite author has said many times, the truth defies simplicity. Truth requires nuance and patience, and there's just not a lot of that going around. So I made myself depressed. Anyway, enough with the introductions. Let's move on to the actual critique. The biggest flaw in my argument is how the conclusion was derived. I'm gonna get a prop again. I gotta stop doing this. Ugh. So at the end of the video, I concluded that numbers don't exist because I used the assumption that numbers exist to derive a conclusion that ended up being false. This is bad logic. So say I had an argument something like, if A is true and B is true, then C must be true. And if later I derive that C is not true, that does not automatically mean that A is false. It could also be the case that B is false. Or, cat, you're a bundle of energy today. Get out of my supplies box. The internet's going to learn that I punch cats. Punch. Punch. Or it could mean that the argument A and B, therefore C, is false. Again? Get out of here. Get. But the most basic understanding of prepositional logic doesn't make Daddy YouTube happy. I think the cat's knocked him over. Yeah, the cat's knocked him over. Stay. Ugh. But the basic fundamentals of prepositional logic don't make Big Daddy YouTube happy. So that didn't end up in the video. I did a lot of yelling at the end of the Cosmic Sophistry video to try to hide this little gap in logic. But if you have even an ounce of critical literacy skills, you probably caught that one immediately. If you didn't, shame on you. Especially on you. Get off social media and go read a book. That is the biggest flaw in my argument, though I do not think it's the most obvious. The most obvious flaw is probably when I claimed that pi was a normal number. I don't actually know whether or not pi is a normal number. Nobody does. I mean, it probably is, but the statistical evidence that I provided in the video is far, far from a rigorous proof. Anybody who knows anything about math is going to catch that immediately, but I think most of the people on YouTube, and therefore most of the people in my audience, aren't going to pick up on that, so I left it in. This is a bit of a tangent, but it might be impossible to prove that pi is a normal number. As I understand it, and I'm not an expert on the topic, there are certain statements in mathematics that are unprovable and yet true. I don't believe we have a method of determining which statements are and are not unprovable. This just might be one of them. But I'm no expert in that sort of thing, so you should take my opinion with a healthy dose of salt. Really, whether or not pi is a normal number has no bearing on my argument. If mathematical Platonism is a thing, and pi isn't a normal number, well, there are still normal numbers, so my argument would still hold water in that circumstance. I used pi because 1, people love pi, 2, it's just commonly accepted that pi exists, and that pi has infinite digits. I don't have to try to establish that irrational numbers are a thing that exist if I use pi. Everybody knows what pi is. That was drilled into you in grade school. Although that brings me to another interesting little tidbit. Mathematical Platonism doesn't need to be an all or none sort of thing. You can be like, well, the integers have Platonic forms, but maybe irrational numbers don't. There's no need to go into that level of nuance to disprove my argument, because the argument was already bad in many other ways, but there's just something to keep in mind. While we're on the subject of pi, there's another thing I should bring up. In my video, I concluded that all finite sets of information exist in pi, which is maybe not true. Assuming pi is a normal number, then sure, you could find any string of digits in pi, but that's not necessarily the same as being able to say that there's information in pi. For example, if I'm looking for a particular 3 trillion digit long string of digits in the decimal expansion of pi, it would almost certainly be at a position in pi that would take more than 3 trillion digits to address. So not only would I have needed to calculate the decimal expansion of pi up to that address, I would also need to store that address to find it, and that would take more information than a 3 trillion digit number. Thus, if extracting information from pi requires more information in than information out, can we really say that that information is stored in pi? In simple terms, an infinite unrepeating decimal expansion does not necessarily contain infinite information. This is true of every normal number, not just pi. Also, pi might not be a normal number, as previously explained. I think that this is probably the second biggest flaw in my argument, and also maybe the least obvious. I may as well go into mathematical Platonism now. I don't find mathematical Platonism very compelling. When we use mathematics to model the universe, and those models turn out to match observations, it's tempting to conclude that math is somehow objectively true. And while I think it's true that Nobel physicist Eugene Wigner was onto something when he said mathematics were unreasonably effective in the natural sciences, I think he'd agree that what we've discovered is not objective truth, but rather an isometry between our observations and the mathematical systems that we use to model those observations. I think I read that once in one of Ryan North's dinosaur comics. I'm pretty sure Utah Raptor said that, and it stuck with me for years. I can't for the life of me find that comic anymore. There's just too many to dig through. But if you happen to know which one it is, please link me to it. As always, thank you, Utah Raptor, for your invaluable insight. While I'm at it, you don't actually need normal numbers for my argument to work either. If the water in my bath can be described with a 3 quattuor-decillion digit number, then you could just say there's a 3 quattuor-decillion digit integer that describes my bath. I don't know why I went down the normal numbers rabbit hole. It was kind of unnecessary for that video. It was fun, though. At the core of my argument, if you assume that the ontological foundation of the universe is information, which is a big assumption, sure, but it's not completely unfounded, and if you assume that mathematical Platonism is true, at least for some countably infinite set, then you'll always end up with some kind of logic that goes, number is real, universe is number, therefore universe is real, no matter how you package it. It's kind of like, thanks, I know the universe is real, I live it every day. Fun to think about, sure, but not super insightful. Here's a note about something that I actually got right in the video that I think some people are going to claim I got wrong. In the video, I claimed that in order to know all the information about the water in the bathtub, you need to know the momentum and position of every particle of water in the bathtub. Now, nobody actually put this in the comments because my video didn't do that well, because of course it didn't. But if it had, some ding-dong definitely would have commented, but you can't know the position and momentum of a quantum particle. We call it uncertainty. My rebuttal: 1, shush dummy. 2, water molecules are big enough that you can actually measure both with a reasonable level of certainty. 3, even if we were to say that the bathtub was filled with photons instead of water molecules, perfect, you would still need a large but ultimately finite amount of information to describe the wave functions of those photons. It's true that quantum uncertainty does limit the amount of information that a system can hold, but it doesn't change the mass energy in the equation that I used. And besides, the fact that the information is finite is the whole point. Trying to argue that there's less information in the tub than what I accounted for, even though I did account for it, only supports my argument. And besides, if you're so flippin' smart, why don't you calculate the Bekenstein bound of your hygiene rituals? I have a pet peeve for bad science discourse, and there's just a lot of that going around right now. And yes, I'm aware that my Cosmic Sophistry video is bad science discourse. My hypocrisy and the irony is not lost on me. And before I get accused of being wasteful, I know water is a hot-button topic these days, but my bathtub is not in any ways a meaningful waste of water. The water where I live comes from a river, not an aquifer. The municipality that I live in has more water than it knows what to do with. It's fine. Now, the power used to heat my water comes from coal, so that's definitely not ideal, but I can't just snap my fingers and build a nuclear power plant somewhere nearby. And I'm not about to give up warm baths, so we're all just gonna have to deal with it. I should probably turn off these lights, though. Moving on to the anthropic principle part of my argument, this part was actually not terrible. One issue you might have noticed is how I regularly conflate observer with people. Sure, obviously you need more elements than just hydrogen to make a people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you couldn't make an observer out of hydrogen. There's a few ways to argue that most observers probably aren't made of hydrogen. One of those ways is to invoke the anthropic principle again. You're an observer, probably an average observer, not made of hydrogen. Therefore, the average observer is not made of hydrogen, among other arguments. Again, you'll have to forgive me for omitting that from the video for expediency. It was getting long enough. Besides that, I think I'm applying the anthropic principle somewhat correctly. I don't think that's a huge issue with my argument. All right, we're almost done. There's one last issue that I should bring up. Towards the end of the video, I tried to calculate the Bekenstein bound of the universe and compare that to the Bekenstein bound of my bathtub. Sorry, an observer. And I simply compared their differences in magnitude to try to get an idea of how often one would appear in a normal number compared to the other. This is kind of a naive approach for a lot of reasons. For starters, there's no reason to assume that any structure you might call a universe has to have a similar magnitude of entropy as another. There's also just no means of separating out random noises from structures that you might call a universe. I kind of glossed over that by calling them random static universes, but I don't really think that's the right way to approach this. That whole part of the argument was about as unrigorous as it could have been. Now, I'm confident that my conclusion isn't wrong. If you took an infinite string of random numbers, you're going to find smaller sequences of digits more often than larger sequences of digits. And I'm still fairly confident that there's only one of you in this universe. But I still skipped a whole bunch of steps to reach that conclusion. I don't really have an excuse. I don't have a rigorous way to get from point A to point B there. I mostly just hoped that all the yelling and big words would convince you. I'm not an authority on anything. I'm just a schmuck who reads way too much pop-sci. Okay, I lied. There's one last flaw that I really don't want to address. I said a megabyte is 1,000 bytes. That wasn't an intentional flaw. I flubbed the line and didn't notice, not even when I was editing. I uploaded the video without realizing it. It isn't important to my argument in any way, but boy does it make me look and feel dumb. Anyways, let's conclude this little critique of my video. If there's anything at all that you can take away from my Cosmic Sophistry video and from this follow-up, what is it? Coffee. If you think about everything you know in the world, everything you've ever observed, there's one thing that should be obvious. There are rules. Events seem to follow some kind of logic. If I let go of this number 7, it's not going to fall up, dissolve into static, or explode, or turn into a copy of Moby Dick and start reciting the Star-Spangled Banner. It's gonna fall to the floor. Watch. A normal number isn't like that. A normal number is, in the truest sense, completely random. My little video essay effectively posited that the universe fits inside a normal number, which it does. Roll a 38 untrigintillion-sided die enough times and eventually you'll get a nat 20. Then I used the anthropic principle to shift the frame of this position from the entire universe to something smaller, just an observer, you. This sleight of hand allowed me to juxtapose the randomness of a normal number with the comparative order of the universe and conclude that a contradiction exists where, in fact, there was none. If you're familiar with the Boltzmann brain experiment, I'm not explaining it, just Google it. I'm doing a Boltzmann brain exactly, I'm just abstracting it from thermodynamics to math broadly. I actually think that this abstraction is useful for thinking about Boltzmann brains, and I don't think I've seen anyone else do it before. But I'm also pretty confident that I'm not the first person who's ever had this idea. And it also doesn't resolve any of the issues with the Boltzmann brain thought experiment. Just clarifies them a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's not crazy to imagine the universe contained in a number. But when you really get down to it, that idea just can't be used to prove or disprove mathematical Platonism. And my video was just a whole lot of nothing. Anyway, that's all I got. Boom, 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 boom. Hi, Chris. That's it for video essays from me for a bit. Those are very exhausting to make, so she wants to jump up. Hi, cat. I'm so glad I caught that on camera. Hi, baby. I'm filming a thing. Go play with 3-3 for a bit. Oh my gosh, you are so needy. All right, I'll get you a snack. Come on. I know you weren't trying to apologize, but your previous video sounded a bit like an apology, so I'm just gonna say you don't have to apologize for not uploading a video. I know we never formalized the rules for this challenge, but I'm uploading one video for every video you upload, but I'm also not making a video every week. I'm not 18 anymore. I know the last video challenge I could do that, but I don't have the time or the energy for that anymore. I know I said that the goal of this video challenge was not quality, and in doing so I implied that it was quantity. I might have actually said it was about quantity, but I don't think that's true. I think it's about neither. I'm gonna burn out if you expect a video a week from yourself and thus a video a week from me. So again, please don't. Just don't. Take a break. It is okay to take breaks. Christian, it's okay to take breaks. Anyways, that's all I got. I'm gonna go edit this now. Bye. I need like a sign off or something. I'll figure it out. I'll workshop it.